All right, let's get your phone calls now at 217-629-7970 about some of the latest happenings in the ongoing litigation against the state's gun ban and the hearing yesterday in Effingham County where we heard from Attorney Thomas DeVore saying that the hearing is 2 hours long, some interesting questions asked, but ultimately DeVore sharing with us what could happen by the end of the week. But I want to get your thoughts. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here on WMAY. But earlier this morning, I shared with you some of the conversation I had with Attorney Thomas DeVore. Here's what he had to say about that hearing yesterday.
We had argument for about 2 hours on the elements of whether the temporary restraining order would be an appropriate thing for the judge to do. Judge took it under advisement and says he will issue his opinion by close of business on Friday.
And DeVore really, I think, crystallized what he said were the most substantive arguments they brought and the court heard about equal protection, because the gun ban, it carves out certain individuals in the law enforcement and security space while treating regular Illinoisans as second-class citizens. That violates the equal protections understanding for constitutional and civil rights. Again, Attorney Thomas DeVore.
I don't think so. I think it's interesting that they tried to argue, Greg, that, they were able to carve out these exempt persons based upon training, which contradicts, they try to suggest that, well, the intent of this law is to limit the number of people that have access to these types of weapons. But so if we accept for conversation that was their intent, how does allowing people to retain those weapons or to buy those weapons based on their training limit the ability of people to have access to them? It's contradictory. So training and limiting the number of those guns and out in the market, I don't think are parallel. That's why I think the equal protection claim carries today significantly.
So let's get your phone calls. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. And also earlier this week, you had the Illinois State Rifle Association file their lawsuit, and that's in federal court. So 3 lawsuits, 2 in state court, 1 in federal court. More are expected. But I talked with Ed Sullivan from the Illinois State Rifle Association, and he said, of course, their lawsuit, it's going through the courts, but he also said it's important that individuals don't take their eyes off of what's going on at the State House, because lawmakers are back in session coming up later on this month, including the Senate next week.
This won't stop today, just because we have this atrocious unconstitutional law. They're going to try and enact more things that will take away our rights bit by bit, and we know that's the case. So ISRA will be on the ground in Springfield next week when we go back to session.
All right, so let's get your phone calls at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop, and good morning. You are on the air.
Hey, good morning, Greg.
Hey.
I wonder if anybody's asked the sheriffs yet if they're going to actively prevent other law enforcement officials from arresting people if they do not comply with this law. I know they said...
Well, the sheriff, and let me just touch on this briefly, here in Sangamon County, Sheriff Jack Campbell said that he put the note out to chiefs across his jurisdiction that they're not going to jail people who are charged solely with this. So they may arrest somebody, but they're not going to stay long at the county jail, according to Sheriff Jack Campbell. I imagine similar positions are being taken by sheriffs across the state.
So they're not going to physically prevent the arrest. They're just not going to house them.
Yeah, I don't think they have that authority to prevent the arrest. Of course, each police officer has discretion on how they handle what they see are alleged crimes. So, but yeah, Campbell told me last week, and you can find that interview on my YouTube channel. But he said, yeah, he's not going to utilize his jail resources for enforcing this.
Second other thing I just want to touch on that I don't think anybody's talked about yet. By them coming out with that letter saying that they believe it's completely unconstitutional and they're not going to comply, they almost have an obligation now to charge the officials who voted on this with conspiracy under the color of the law in a deliberate attempt to circumvent our constitutional rights. So they've kind of pigeonholed themselves now where they can't really take a passive approach if they've released these letters. But that's just my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has analyzed that.
And I've seen that shared online in various circles of rounding them up and arresting those who violated their oaths of office. Appreciate the calls. Let's get to more. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Good. Yourself?
Good. You know, I'm a strong 2A advocate, and I just look at these things as they're holding innocent people accountable for what criminals do, what suicidal people do, and what gangsters and drug addicts, drug crime guys do. And I just don't see the fairness in that. I have debated several of these anti-gun people, face to face, and a lot of the times they can't hold their argument for more than a few minutes. They're still our fellow citizens, so I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I mean, we do need a stronger debate forum to get to the populace, because this is just an absolutely wrong thing. I mean, if you look at the scales of justice, the pro gun side is hitting the floor, and the anti-gun side is still hanging in the air. They just don't have any justice on their side, any facts. Yes, crime happens, and yes, crime happens with guns. But if there is such thing as gun violence, then Serena Williams has never won anything. Her Wilson rackets have. You cannot blame what tools people use to do things.
And I think some of the strongest testimony we heard in this ongoing debate from weeks ago, one of the hearings that happened on the original bill that was being proposed to ban guns in Illinois, you had somebody who was part of a gun club up in the Chicago suburbs, and he talked about how he attended the Highland Park parade. He had to leave his concealed carry firearm in his vehicle to comply with the law while he attended the parade, but then the parade ended abruptly, and he walked down the street to see the carnage. He saw the carnage. He tried to help people with triage and first response, and he said that he was very upset at that moment. And then he looked at the lawmakers that were on the panel, and he said that was done by a monster. It was not me, and it was not you, that individual said. And I thought that was pretty powerful.
Greg, I lost my son to somebody that made some crap drugs and killed him. I have to watch lawmakers decriminalize and legalize drugs every single day. I don't hold people who smoke marijuana accountable or guilty for what happened to my son. The pain of losing a child is mind altering. It's mind numbing and painful that never goes away. And mob rule and lynchings happen when people want to hold somebody accountable right now for what happened. And this is where America has to say stop. We can't hold 100 million firearm owners guilty for what miscreants and reprobates do in crime.
Well, and even with the Highland Park case, and I appreciate the call. I've got full phone lines, and sorry about your loss. But even with the Highland Park case, has anybody at Illinois State Police that dropped the ball on that clear and present danger report filed against the suspect back in 2019 that should have prevented him from getting a state-issued firearm owner ID card, which he ultimately did get and purchased the rifle legally, and then allegedly opened fire, killing 7 and injuring dozens? Has anybody at Illinois State Police been held accountable? No, all they did was just change a rule. And even that was something that Republicans said they didn't necessarily have to do because the law was already there to allow for them to use those clear and present danger reports. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts?
The Democrats used to march and walk for civil rights and equal equality, but now they seemingly have no issue infringing on those rights. I mean, if you think about it, even if on the surface you're not for ARs or semi-automatic rifles, you have less rights than your neighbor who has one. You have less rights than those who live in neighboring states who can all buy them. They are in common use. They are not particularly dangerous. I mean, anything can be dangerous in the wrong hands. The bat of a hammer can be dangerous in the wrong hands. So this was the easiest way for them to cop out and be able to try to, on the surface, make a political stunt to ban these weapons to get a political win when they don't, because they know that they can't really address the real problem.
Well, the real problem is something I think everybody wants to address, and that's socioeconomic barriers. That's what some may say is inherent racism or systematic racism or systemic racism, I should say. But regardless, those are deep-seated issues that are going to take some major hard conversations. And I don't think that essentially saying that law-abiding citizens have to register a tool that is the only tool, physical thing that the Constitution gives you the right to have. It's a God-given right, but too quick, it seems the knee-jerk reaction is to just go after that item instead of addressing the root causes. Appreciate the call. Got to take one more here before the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts?
Good morning, Greg. You know, we have a lot of gun laws, but there's no punishment for them. For example, the FBI just put a guy in jail just last week or last month, gangbanger up in Chicago, machine gunning people outside the car door, you know, just mowing people down, 5 years in jail. Machine gun, whole 9 yards, 5 years in jail. Now, where's the punishment here? I mean, if he's going to get out in basically 2.5 years, I mean, let's do something about this. Let's make some of these punishments real. That's 90% of my headache for this is that what are you going to do? You're going to throw them in jail for another 60 days and then pull them back out? I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me.
It's, conversations that need to happen, but will they happen, or will there be more conversations to infringe upon legal gun owners, including the possibility here in Illinois that mandated fingerprints would become the law for gun owners? That's something that's being floated at the State House, or allowing for people to sue gun manufacturers. That's something that's being floated at the State House. Are we instead going to look at enhancing penalties for those who commit gun crimes, violent gun crimes, who use illegal weapons that they don't have a right to because they may be a felon or whatever the case may be? Are we going to see enhanced penalties there, or are we merely just going to go after the law-abiding gun owners? That's an ongoing concern that a lot of people have. All right, got to take a break. We may get to more of your phone calls coming up here on WMAY. All right, a few more minutes here. We've got a commenter on YouTube, Redbeard's Racing, telling me that I need to highlight the law about deprivation of rights using the color of law. And if you do just a simple search, you can find this, and it's on the Department of Justice's website. Deprivation of rights under color of law says it's a crime for a person acting under color of law to willfully deprive a person of rights of privileged protection by the Constitution or laws of the United States. And, you know, I guess that's an argument that can be used to go after individuals who seem to try to chip away at constitutional rights using the color of law. However, I think the argument against that would be they passed this law. So the best way to go and challenge it is through the courts. But how's this impacting gun stores and gun store customers? Max and Shooters, and we've talked with Dan Eldridge, the owner there, for several times, and he's laid out in a Q&A what exactly this is happening to customers, how they're impacted, and a whole bunch of different questions about what's banned, what's defined as an assault weapon. He said that they are complying at his display in store, taking guns off the shelves until further notice.
They're in safe storage. The magazines, we're not delivering the greater than 15 round magazines with duty-sized pistols. We're holding them securely for customers so that when we do get injunctive relief here, or the state is restrained from enforcing this, then we'll contact the customers and they can come collect their property from us.
And on Dan's Q&A, he has a question: will this ban be overturned? And the answer to that is, he says yes, and hopefully very quickly. The act borrows heavily from similar laws in New Jersey, New York, California, and Maryland, where those were sent back to the lower courts in the Bruin case last summer. Interesting to see all this continue to play out, and we'll continue to cover it here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and